welcome to our first panel today, and I'm very happy to be invited to this discussion today. Imre Vass is my name. As mentioned earlier, I'm partner at Our New Energy, which is a PPA transaction advisory business present in the main European markets. And I have five very esteemed and experienced panelists today. I would like you just to make a short introduction. I would like to ask you guys to introduce yourself briefly and the company that you are working for. I think first, Jan.
Okay. Yeah, that's more useful with the microphone. Hi, my name is Jan Kłoczko. Quite a difficult name, so always making sure that I present myself in the beginning. I'm from Greenvolt Power. We are the utility scale development company, part of a bigger Greenvolt group. It's a Portuguese company. And I'm the commercial deputy director responsible for Europe, doing PPAs, route to market, anything related to selling energy and to making the projects fly.
Thank you.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Stefan Dinse. So first of all, thank you very much for taking part at the conference. I'm working at Vattenfall, mainly responsible for all offshore activities to market access. So in general, everything relates to downstreams or industrial partners, but also now more focused on, let's say, system integration like hydrogen topics, which are also part of the discussion today.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jamie Vasquez. I'm a PPA director at Econergy. We are an IP developer and IPP of renewable projects, utility scale, across Europe. Basically, we have projects in Romania, Poland, Italy, UK, Greece, Spain, etc. We are a listed company in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and obviously have a lot of interest in also other European markets, and including Germany, of course.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Peschel. I work at Ampere Solar Europe. Ampere Solar Europe is a large-scale developer and IPP of ground-mounted solar across some European jurisdictions like Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. And my role is a PPA originator. That means I'm responsible for securing long-term offtake for our new-built solar assets, mainly via corporate PPAs, but also via alternative route to markets with utilities and other concepts. We're also active in the battery sector, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Max van Hausen. I work for Pexapark as a country lead for Germany on PPA transactions. Basically, the company is a advisory and software company dedicated at energy sales and the management of associated risk with the energy. So in plain words, we help with PPA transactions, storage optimizing agreements, but as well on the software side, you may have come across our PPA pricing tool or tools that help you understand actual revenues at risk that come out of your assets and that you have to somehow track, and also understand your open positions into the future. And background in energy trading and origination in Germany, Latin America actually, and across Europe with Pexapark the past 3 years. I'm very happy to have you all here. Very welcoming any chats that you may want to have at this panel with us all together, and also afterwards at any coffee break.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you, and we have very interesting discussion points today, because I think if you talk about renewables, of course, PPAs and risk mitigation around PPAs is always a very difficult and interesting topic, both for the developers and for the off-takers. And today we have already heard in the keynote speech, but also in the previous presentation about storage. Storage is becoming a very let's say, popular topic amongst investors and off-takers because it helps the integration of renewables. But how does it look in detail? And I'm turning to you, Jan, as first. What do you see as the key advantages of storage and also disadvantages?
Okay, thank you. So I would say that the development of the storage technology came just in time, because we sort of, especially as a solar, but also as a wind industry, we operated a bit like a fresh greens farmer who found their clients, and we were happy that the cooperation works and the business is flourishing, but we forgot about the truck driver. So suddenly we found out that there's nobody to drive our lettuce into the city. Yes, so very late we discovered that there is somebody who's called the transmission system operator and the distribution system operator, and that they have their own problems, and these problems are diminishing our results and they're increasing our risk. So the problem, I would say, the unseen problem that we didn't recognize as an industry, that there is that the big unseen player in the market is the so-called spinning reserve. The spinning reserve is something that makes sure that the system is operating in a stable way. And with time, the more there are renewables, the more there are intermittent sources, the less there is spinning reserve in the system becomes unstable. And we suddenly crossed this sort of a breakthrough point where we moved from a world where we felt very secure and convenient with the system operating by itself and we selling energy by ourselves. We entered the world where we're actually impacting the stability of the grid. And because the TSO has the last word, he's able to curtail us, to redispatch us, and this impacts directly. This is something that our clients already recognize. In other words, these are the risks, and even worse, these are the unknowns that are being passed into the contracts. And at the end of the day, the PPA, which used to be the bankable instrument, the instrument that made your installation bankable, starts to lose its appeal, because we're not sure how many of the hours will be curtailed, for example. And here enters the battery storage. And the battery storage, everybody is still learning how to use it, but intuitively it has a really great potential, both on the operator end when it's co-located and also as a part of the grid stabilization system, because it replaces those elements of the grid that allowed for very quick makeup of the energy that was not sufficient, or, I mean, when the grid was operating suboptimally, the battery storage is able to respond just in time to make sure that the operator is happy, and that at the same time, which means for us, it translates into better prices of energy and into better operation of our assets.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more to Jan, actually. To give you a bit of numbers, how big this is actually getting. So just in 23 alone, we had an addition of 56 gigawatts of solar and 16 gigawatts of wind just in Europe. So going down to Germany, this is 14 gigawatts in solar just in 1 year. That is added, that's literally intermittent power. So you will have tremendous need for flexibility, because otherwise, as described, you have a cannibalization of your value of the power output of your assets that you want to try to prevent. It's actually the exact problems that we heard. What does that make for balancing services, the cost surge? What does that mean for negative price hours? Maybe also something like in Germany, redispatch. So this is all topics that storage hopefully can address.
Yep. Thank you very much for that, and I give the word in a minute to Stefan, to you, because I think it's an interesting challenge that as part of the storage is obviously mitigating the risk also for the developer. On the other hand, the complexity around the PPA increases because you need to include the storage in the PPA structure. And I'm turning to you, Stefan, how you see that happening, and how I think a magic word of hybrid PPAs are flying around now in the community. But can you just let us know how you see that developing?
Yeah, I think we've been very good in the last few years to add more capacities in the renewable energy space, or solar or wind power. But I think in general, to make the next up to the full transition, we definitely need to have more flexibility in the grid. So that's not only battery storage, that could be also other technologies like power to X or hydrogen electrolyzers and something like that. So everything needs to kind of combine now in what you just mentioned, like hybrid PPAs, where you're combining a solar asset or wind asset with a battery, and then also kind of transfer this value to your end consumers. For example, when you see right now, there are a lot of end consumers who are not able to take any more solar power due to their peaks into their portfolio. They need to kind of flatten the power curve to make it even more, or make it adaptable in their industrial processes. Yeah? I think that's a general thing we've seen in the past, that the industry needs or requires more stable power flows instead of these peak flows, or the volatile power flows we are seeing from the solar and the wind assets. So therefore, it's crucial to implement the storage systems in the whole scenario. I think for now it's pretty difficult to value this premium as concluding in the PPA. So I think in general there is a clear message. We need to have the storage. Like you mentioned right now, I think how it's going to work out and what's the price and the premium in the PPAs itself, it's still an open point.
Thank you very much for that. I think hybrid PPAs and PPAs in general have been obviously influenced by regulations also very much in the past years, and obviously the complexity and the increase of complexity around PPAs would even make the regulation to be streamlined more important. And I think the latest EU regulatory changes and the electricity market reform is exactly aiming that goal, meaning that boosting the PPA market as such and making more and more players participating in this. How do you see that, Jaime, from the developer point of view? And also, how do you see the electricity market reform implementation affecting also your business?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult question. So basically, just to take a step back, I mean, the 2022 energy crisis, I mean, across Europe, so the prices, skyrocketing, something that most people did not forecast, certainly not advisors, market advisors. So obviously, it was Russia using gas prices as a war weapon and affecting and trying to bring the whole Europe, to its knees. So as a reaction to that, and I think well intended, the European Council and Parliament have initiated this reform process of the electricity markets. It's true that this was caused by this crisis. It's also true that it was, at some point in time, it had to be done because basically the electricity market is changing, because the electricity mix is changing. So basically, we no longer, as we like quickly touched on in the previous presentation, we no longer have just fossil fuels providing electricity and basically setting a price which is very much linked to the marginal cost, basically the cost of fuel. But now we have, and growingly so, thanks God, electricity supplied by renewable sources, which have pretty much zero or close to zero marginal cost. So a marginal system of setting the price for electricity, I mean, it has proven to work, but sometimes not in the proper way. Sometimes with very high prices, sometimes with very low prices, and obviously governments are much more worried about the first case. Now that we are seeing very low prices across Europe, suddenly governments are not so worried because they are mostly worried about consumers, not about producers. So the intention of the reform is obviously to try to bring stability to the market, try to protect consumers, including vulnerable consumers, also try to protect businesses. And one of the key elements highlighted in this reform is definitely PPAs. So they want to promote PPAs in various fronts. One of them is is try to enable PPAs for non-bankable customers, non-bankable off-takers, not non-bankable buyers. Typically, I mean, the large corporations have always been able to enter into PPAs. You know, the Googles, Amazons, you know, these kind of large companies. They obviously have their own balance sheet to support their bankability, and obviously lenders are very happy to lend money on that basis. But the smaller businesses are usually very, you know, limited in what they can do, and obviously that limits a lot the scope of PPAs. So that's one of the areas where they want to provide government support to be able to enable these smaller companies to enter into PPAs, because that brings stability to the whole system. They also want to promote transnational PPAs. Basically, again, that's something that has been limiting traditionally PPAs. And that's an area where there's a lot of discussion, especially around what would be the electricity price that would be that the PPA price would be settling against, and that's obviously a difficult task. Just also, as I wanted to mention, I mean, from a regulatory point of view, the changes are very relevant and very important, because it's when the regulations change, it's like changing the rules of the game, you know, when you're already playing, and that can bring a lot of problems. And we, I mean, I come from Spain, and we have a very negative experience there when the whole sector was changed, and there was a lot of disputes, and not many people know, but Spain is now ranking second place in the Center for International Disputes for Investment, only after Venezuela. So that leaves a very poor position. And a lot of these cases are being lost by the Spanish government, where basically it says, yes, they had a business case to get what it was promised, and suddenly it was changed once the installation was up and running with a promised tariff for 25 years, and then it was deemed that we could no longer pay for that high tariff, and that was changed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jaime. I think that's a very important point that you speak about, this stability. Stability obviously is the ultimate goal of also the electricity market reform, and for consumers, but also for investors. And I think that's still a question mark if we look at the current form, and also the way forward for the electricity market reform, if it will really reach this target. And you mentioned, I think, a very important point, which was the price stability. And obviously the regulator is always worried about the very high prices, but we have seen very low prices also in the recent times, and it means even negative prices, which is obviously a problem from project development perspective. And Daniel, I'm turning to you. How do you see that from your angle? The latest negative prices were in many markets a big topic, and it calls for actually a solution.
Yeah, it's actually a very important topic to be addressed, as negative prices have been around for, let's say, a decade now already. At least in Germany, it's been for a very long time. But in the past, it was mostly caused by the inflexibility of the conventional power plant fleet, and sometimes also by a large amount of wind capacity on the grid. But in recent years, with the addition in solar in Central European markets like Germany, but also very much we see that in the Netherlands, which has one of the highest solar penetrations per capita in the world, we see more and more negative prices during the day, especially on weekends and on public holidays. So this year already, up to now, we have had over 150 negative hours in both markets, Germany and the Netherlands already, and we're probably going for up to 500 if the trend continues, which will be then the year with most negative prices in history. So obviously everyone can imagine that this will be quite a big challenge for renewable energy asset owners, and that everyone is looking to find ways to mitigate that risk. And we have one of them addressed already, which obviously is adding storage systems to renewable energy assets, both solar and wind. But obviously, thinking about the physical capabilities of a battery, it's not completely capable of eliminating the entire negative price risk, as we would need massive batteries to build, to buffer the entire generation during negative prices. So there we need more mitigation solutions. So another one would be the obvious one, which would be flexibility, curtailment. Why would you produce when the price is negative? Just shut down the installation and avoid a loss, which is easily said, but actually in practice, that is not always the case. In Germany, by law, generators are required to have the flexibility to steer installations, but in other markets, like the Netherlands again, for example, this is not the case. So basically there, installations are running when prices are even at minus 200 euros per megawatt hour, making huge losses. So there, obviously, a first step would be to make sure that every new asset and also retrofitting old assets are actually capable of shutting down, of curtailing when prices are negative to help the system.
And beyond the regulatory tools, do you see any contractual possibility to make up actually for this situation that in negative hours assets are running?
Yeah, well, in the good old days of PPAs, I think the mitigation and contract was the off-taker takes the risk, which was sometimes utilities, sometimes corporates, where PPAs were very simple, where it pays produced contract, the off-taker takes the power in all hours and pays a fixed price to the generator. These days are over, well, unfortunately for generators, good for the risk takers that they are more aware of this risk. And obviously nowadays the balance of risks between the parties, between the generator and the off-taker is shifting. So we see more and more contracts where basically the off-taker gets a right to curtail the asset, or even where we define a threshold price below which there is no off-take at all. But it depends on the contract structure, physical or virtual. There is many ways to structure such a PPA, and I would say there is no market standard yet in that respect.
Yes, you've mentioned, Imre, that the addition of energy storage adds complexity to the PPAs, but I just wanted to mention that responding to negative prices already added a lot of complexity to the PPAs, because at the end of the day, as you've mentioned, this is a risk that has to be shared somehow between the parties. And as PPAs are complex by nature, sometimes introduction of a certain solution impacts other parts of the PPA that you didn't think about. So, for example, if you, for example, get a provision in your PPA that you can curtail yourself during the negative prices, and you don't make sure that it doesn't impact your availability factor, then at the end of the day you may run into trouble. Even though you thought you secured your risk of running at negative prices, at the end of the day you get hit by not getting your not getting your availability right.
Thank you very much. I mean, obviously, yes. So I think these are very important points, which you also mentioned, Jan. And as you also mentioned, Daniel, there is no market standard yet. So the market needs to actually just find the optimal solution for those questions. But we haven't mentioned the VPPAs and the virtual PPAs yet, even though they have been also quite popular lately in some markets especially. And can a virtual PPA provide a solution for these issues in terms of negative prices, potentially in terms of stability of PPAs? How do you see that, Max, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it can. So I think first of all, it was good to say there's a lot of issues, and you may have one fix, but then you need another fix, otherwise it doesn't fit together. A VPPA by nature is an exchange of two cash flows. So not like a physical PPA where you actually have to deliver an electron, you only have two cash flows. And that allows you a lot of possibilities. What you do physically is completely disconnected from your VPPA. And hence, this provides you with flexibility in your contractual obligations. You can completely separate also certain products, for example, power from the green certificates, the balancing services. There's always a party that is more competitive. So that's actually something we do very actively at Park, where we see we can bring more revenues for the assets. And now, today, I think we're a bit on storage. This is exactly the same thing. So you would concentrate the VPPA on your solar asset, but then you would probably enter into a physical optimization agreement for your storage. And that way, the optimizer has the rules of the VPPA that he has to optimize against and be better than that. So there's a lot of advantages as well on like just looking from a corporate perspective. Often they have multiple like countries where they're operating, but maybe they have one main and they're just interested in cheap certificates, green certificates. So they would probably focus on one bigger transaction that is then cross-European. Or, as mentioned before, you're in Eastern Europe and there's maybe no credit-worthy off-taker. You could think of a cross-border PPA, which by nature typically is a VPPA. So there's a lot of advantages apart from, and that really matters on perspective, usually VPAs are much easier. The first time you read them, it's probably not true, but the more you transact, they're facilitating many transactions. Yeah.
And do you see any major difference in price, for example, between the physical PPA and the virtual PPA?
This really depends a bit on the off-taker type. So would it be a utility? Would it be a corporate? On your tenor as well. So I think whereas on the shorter tenor, I would agree you can definitely get a significant increase in revenue or PPA price. By separating the product power, certificates, and balancing. And just on the power, you already have a higher price. I would say that's true for the short term, meaning 1, 2, 3 years. On the longer term, you are tending more to access corporate offtake, and there I wouldn't see the significant change. That change of price would come more from choosing at the moment in this current market the corporate rather than the utility offtake.
And I would just like to add here that from experience, very much in Germany, but also in some other more conservative markets, the industrial offtake or the corporate offtake is still very hesitant to enter into virtual PPAs because for them it's very important to have a physical flow of electrons from balancing from the renewable energy asset to a balancing group to another balancing group to the meter. And that sometimes causes, let's say, issues convincing off-takers that a virtual PPA would be the better suited solution for them. But we're slowly moving towards this.
I totally agree. I think in general there is a clear trend towards virtual PPAs within, not only within Europe, but all over the world. I think there have been some large IT companies who have pushed into that market at first just to be also more flexible in their demand over the countries. I think in Germany we are still facing accounting issues regarding virtual PPAs. So that means beside of IFRS 9, for example, you need to account it as a fair value hedge. That brings a lot of complexity to the balancing or to the company itself on the balance sheet and so on. So that means, okay, based on their own use, so it's called own use exemption, you can do these PPAs, but then it must be physical. And I think that's the biggest constraint we're facing right now, that the large corporates who already have taken a lot of PPAs are now almost at the highest level of what they actually can consume at the maximum and would exceed now taking more PPAs, and they would like to take more PPAs, but on a physical basis they are not allowed or cannot take more PPAs due to the fact that it will be again fair value accounting, which brings more trouble now to the balance sheet again. But I think in general the regulations or IFRS committees are working currently also on a solution to overcome this problem. So therefore I think also in Germany we're seeing more and more virtual PPAs in the futures, in particular for the large companies who are accounting as of IFRS 9.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that in terms of virtual versus physical PPA, one of the things that plays a role is geography, because if you're in Europe, you have to take into account the accounting problems, generally the complexity of operating such a PPA from a accounting perspective. So in Greenvolt, we've signed both physical PPAs and virtual PPAs. We say that physical PPA is a headache to negotiate, but is fair play to run, whereas the virtual PPA is easy to negotiate, but a headache to run, because then you have to go into all this accounting, etc., and not every off-taker is ready for that. If you have an off-taker who already has some hedge accounting, it's fair game, yes. But at the end of the day, it's really a chore to operate.
You can see that we all talk from a producer's point of view, because the producer's actually fine in most cases.
I mean, but from a producer point of view, we're usually generally okay with both options. I mean, virtual or physical, it depends on the off-taker. The off-taker is often limited by accounting, but mainly auditing, which is what comes after accounting issue, and especially if the auditor has a tendency to classify it as a speculative PPA, which obviously that breaks down the profit and loss account, because it can take swings depending on the expected market price, towards future, and that actually can basically destroy not the balance, but the accounts of the off-taker, and even affect its own bankability. So it is a difficult issue, and I think that I've had discussions with auditors where you try to defend, look, this PPA is clearly not speculation. The off-taker is consuming this electricity. They are not trying to make a gain betting on the market on what the price would be and trying to win, but basically they are just trying to secure a price for their consumption. And still, I mean, I'm hoping that there are no auditors in the room, but still they insist in no, but we need to examine this, the effectivity test, etc., and it takes a lot of effort and arguments to convince them, and that is something that should actually be promoted more, because as we mentioned, virtual PPAs overcome some of the obstacles that physical PPAs have, and obviously they were created to bring around more flexibility. Where that flexibility is not needed, great, physical PPA works, but sometimes it is required because of various reasons.
I think when speaking about flexibility, also virtual PPAs have the advantage that it enables also mid-sized corporates to take part into this PPA game. It's not only by the big companies now, so also virtual PPAs can be, for example, enable portfolio PPA solutions, which makes it way more easier to bring more and more corporates into the markets, more consumers who also are interested to sign PPAs in short and long-term contracts. So I think that's also one big advantage to mention.
I just wanted to go back slightly to storage, because I mean, basically, what it means not having enough storage right now is, and we've seen that in countries like in Spain, when there are days with a lot of wind or solar production, and still some of this production is curtailed to make a space for gas production. And you would wonder, why are we choosing gas over gas, which has actually a cost, both economical and from an environmental point of view, over basically supply, which is environmentally friendly, etc., which is being wasted? The answer is technical restrictions. We need exactly. We need the spinning reserve. We need voltage regulation, frequency regulation, and that currently is not easily given by renewables. Obviously, there comes storage, which will play that role hopefully very soon in the future. Storage, I mean, storage in whatever form, but mainly battery storage, need to take several breakthroughs. I mean, one is a technical over the coming years, similar to what wind, but especially solar PV has taken. One is a technical breakthrough. I mean, obviously the efficiency needs to improve, new technologies, new components, etc. Economic breakthrough, the cost bringing down. Regulation breakthrough. I mean, there's a lot of there are different regulations in the different markets and not always clear. In some markets, for example, a battery is considered sometimes as a consumer, sometimes as a producer, which is crazy because then you are getting hit both ways, which is absolutely absurd. And also basically a market regulation. We need to make sure that the business case exists and is profitable because we are not NGOs. So basically we need to make money if we want to invest money in batteries, which are, because they are good for the system, good for the grid and for the consumers, that needs to be rewarded accordingly. And that doesn't happen in most markets. The markets where we see batteries flourish, it's mainly because the regulation is clear and the market is clear and it's profitable.
Thank you very much. I think if I listen to you, two things become clear. One is that regulation is, of course, very important, as always, but there is no one solution or one size fits all, because if it's a physical PPA or virtual, if it's a storage in any shape or form, battery storage or others, if it's any other solution, to actually have the optimum for all market players is actually only available if everyone is speaking and trying to find the bilaterally best solution for the given situation. And that's why we like this, and that's why this system becomes and remains complex also going forward. Even if storage is added and even if virtual PPAs are available, we would still have the complexity and need the dialogue. By that, I would like to close this panel. Thanks a lot for your comments.